So hello, and thank you for joining this session of the McGill Executive Institute's Level Up webinar series. My name is Eric Sain, Director of the Institute, and thank you again for joining. Welcome. This session is going to last 1 hour and include time to answer your questions throughout. It's going to be a very interactive session, so although you'll be muted, we invite you to post comments as you're doing right now in the chat function at the bottom of your screen. Also, for better video viewing, we ask that you turn off your video by clicking on Stop Video to the lower left of your screen. The session is being recorded and will be shared with you afterwards. So it's a pleasure, and we're very proud to welcome your webinar leader for today, Jared Lee. Jared is a faculty member of the McGill Executive Institute and a specialist in such areas as design thinking, problem solving, and change leadership. Pamela Sorrenti is a learning designer and also a specialist in our public programs. She's the director of our open enrollment programs at the McGill Executive Institute, and you're going to be seeing her throughout this session today. She's going to be your moderator. So again, thank you for attending. And with that, let's get started. Over to you, Jared.
Thank you very much, Eric. It is my pleasure to be here to join all of you today. Welcome to our webinar at the McGill Executive Institute. I'd like to add that I am a McGill alum. I did my MBA at McGill several years back, and it's nice to sort of make the full circle. I have a background in engineering with a bachelor's in aerospace engineering and a master's in mechanical engineering. So design thinking is something for me that really marries two parts of my life. That engineering side, how do we break down problems? How do we really understand good design things that people really need and want, as well as the business aspect of things. How do we organize ourselves in such a way that it makes sense from a business perspective? So I'm very excited to be here with you today. Once again, welcome. I'd like to get to know you a bit better. I see from the chat that we've got quite a few people from all across Canada and even around the world. I'd like to know a little bit more about you as well. We're going to launch a poll to ask you two questions. Please make sure that you answer both. In which industry do you work, as closely as possible? And in which job function do you work? So there's two separate questions there. You might be an IT manager in the healthcare space, for example, or an engineer in public administration. Please answer both. We'll give it a moment for everybody's answers to get in. The reason we ask you that is really twofold. One, it's interesting for you to get to know your peers, the audience, what's in the room, so to speak, in terms of expertise and experience. It also helps me as a presenter to tailor the presentation to a certain degree and understand the audience. Really, design thinking is all about empathy for the audience, understanding where people are, meeting them where they are, and delivering what they need. So we're going to start off with that, with this poll. Unfortunately, I can't take a moment to do a deep dive one-on-one interview with all 300 of you, but we can do this poll and get a feel for the room overall.
Awesome. Thanks, Jared. So about 70% have voted so far. So we'll give it just another 30 seconds, I'd say, for those of you just joining. And for those of you on the phone, the industries are, agriculture and natural resources, construction, manufacturing, transportation, utilities, wholesale and retail, professional and consumer services, public administration, education, and NGOs, healthcare and pharmaceutical, other. And the job functions are management, administration, HR, engineering, sciences, manufacturing, creative arts and design, sales and client services, education, development and coaching, information technology, and other. So I'm going to end the poll with that. And there are quite a few of others, so that would be interesting to know more about. In the chat, you can go ahead and enter what other means for you. There are a lot from public administration and education, and most people are in management, actually. So 52% are in management. Can you all see the results? Perfect. Great.
Yeah, quite a few and others. So thanks for chiming into the chat what that other was. Despite that exhaustive list, we still have quite a few people in the other, and that is perfectly acceptable because design thinking is also about recognizing that everyone is unique. You have your own unique situation, and as exhaustive as we might be in a poll, we always try to include that other category and then really dig in there and figure out what's going on. So that's a great example as well, to see that there's quite a few people from other categories. But we see that no matter which industry, most people in management, administration, human resources, and so I'll tailor perhaps some of the examples as best I can to that, although we do have quite a few product examples as well, because products are something that allow you to really understand it in a more tangible sense. So we use those oftentimes, but this applies perfectly well to services, how you're setting up your teams and communicating with people as well. Well, first of all, thank you for participating in the poll, and let's get ourselves going then, shall we? So buckle up for the ride ahead. We've got another 54 minutes together. We're going to use every minute of it as best we can. First, big question. What the heck is design thinking? It's a word, or a phrase I should say, that gets bantered around quite a bit. You hear it, it's sort of a buzzy word. And as Dilbert rightly explains, I'll read the comic that everybody sees for those of you calling on the phone. We've got a Dilbert cartoon where Dogbert consults. Dogbert says to the meeting, to survive, you must create disruptive innovations that redefine the market. His colleague says, does that mean the same thing as just sell things that people want? Dogbert's response, well, there's one big difference. Well, you only get paid if you say it in a funny way. Dogbert responds, well, I like to think I'm disruptively innovative. So let's avoid, perhaps, Dogbert's conundrum there of tangling himself in knots of disruptive innovation, what that happens to mean. Let's figure out from your perspective, before I try to put a label on what design thinking is, how would you define design thinking based on what you know now? Some of you may be coming in as people who have gone through design thinking training in the past, but some of you may be very, very new to it, and that's perfectly okay. Chime in on the chat. How would you define design thinking based on what you know now?
Thanks, Jared. So let's see. Design thinking equals think before you code. I like that. Everyone is labeled, everything is labeled a hack, thinking hacks. Design thinking is looking at problems outside of the box, designing with intent, eating the elephant one bite at a time. Design thinking is knowing how the customer explores solution space, avoid premature convergence, a framework approach to identifying and solving problems. Let's see what else. So looking at a problem from a new perspective, overview of the situation, puts customers first. So a lot of really good answers, Jared.
Yeah, and I see him still scrolling through there. And some people have talked about brainstorming, iteration, and testing. Strategy to think in the big picture. Yeah, there's a lot of that zoom out, take a step back approach. Absolutely.
Strategic processes using different models. Yeah. Root cause thinking. It's a good way to put it. A better method for ideation leading to innovations. So I think people have a pretty good handle on what design thinking is.
There's a lot of really great stuff in there. Thank you, Pamela. And one thing that I really want to touch on first that many of you mentioned, there's a lot of great elements. The first element, as many of you rightly put, is understanding the customer, really framing things for the customer's needs. So that's where we're going to start. We're going to build on that definition for a bit, but let me tell you what I mean when I say understand what the customer's real wants, needs, desires are. The first one is, if you sell drill bits, you might think, I've got to get the perfect drill bit. I got to get it produced and manufactured at a really low cost. I've got to make it sharp so it cuts a hole every time. I'm going to really focus my engineering design on making that perfect angle on that drill bit head. I'm going to make it nice and shiny. I'm going to put a cool brand around it because, man, people are going to want to buy my drill bits. But customers don't buy drill bits. They buy holes. Think about that for a second. They don't buy drill bits. They buy holes. They buy a drill bit for the proxy reason that they need a hole in something. So what their underlying need is is they need a hole through a certain material of a certain size and a certain depth. They need it to be done reliably when they need it done. They don't buy a drill bit, most people don't, to have a drill bit collection, to sit there and look at their drill bit at night and say, my goodness, what a beautiful drill bit I have. No, they buy the drill bit to use it to make a hole. So customers buy holes, not drills. Let's think about FedEx. Holiday season coming up, we're all stuck at home. Online shopping is through the roof. Supply chains are disrupted. What does FedEx deliver? FedEx, you might say, delivers packages. What FedEx's CEO says they deliver is peace of mind. We don't deliver packages, we deliver peace of mind, he says. What else? Domino's. You may have ordered some Domino's, supporting your local Domino's chain during COVID. Domino's took that idea of peace of mind a step out to connect with their customers through their Domino's ordering app. And you see right there is an example of the Domino's pizza tracker. You can place an order online and know exactly when your pizza is the order is being confirmed, when it's being prepared, when it's put in the oven, when it's out for delivery, and when it's at your door. That replaces the old days of 30 minutes or it's free. Sort of an old cliche in the pizza delivery business, hot, fresh pizza in 20 minutes or you get your money back. Well, Domino's didn't really have a problem delivering things on time, but they had people calling, say, did you get my order? Is somebody working on my order? It routed my order to this store. Do you really have it? Is somebody really coming? Oh, it's 29 minutes. I better call just to make sure it's here on time. I've got guests over. So instead of the 30 minutes or it's free, Domino's provides the pizza tracker to provide transparency to their customers. Transparency, not refunds. They already had this in place. The beautiful thing is they already had the pizza tracker in place internally. They simply opened up that information to provide that transparency to their customers. In a certain sense of the FedEx tracking, that peace of mind, Domino's now delivers that same transparency. This can go so far on the app basis as Uber. Many of you have probably used Uber. One woman famously called an Uber instead of an ambulance to get her to the hospital because she wanted reassurance that someone was on their way and how long it would take to get to the hospital. So she used an Uber to get to the hospital instead of an ambulance. Part of that is reassurance. So how do we know what people want? If the goal here is to understand customer needs and provide that reassurance, not transport, the peace of mind, not packages, how do we know? Are you ready for the truth? The truth is that no matter how much we think we don't know much. We oftentimes don't know what our clients want. We oftentimes don't even know why our clients want what they want. Think about that. How big of a gulf is it between you right now? Reflect on that for a moment. Do you really understand why your clients are purchasing the goods and services? Or if you're in a nonprofit organization, I saw a few people worry, maybe not in a business where you're selling something, but think about your client, your partners. Why are they partnering with you? Do you really understand? And does it stop at just the good or the service? Does it stop at just the package delivery, just the pizza, just the transport? Or is there something deeper than that of why they're partnering with you, why they're spending their time, their money, their energy with you and your organization? The truth is, oftentimes we struggle to define not just what our clients want, but why they want what they want. So you're saying to me, Jared, all right, thanks, that makes me feel great. How do we find out, right? That's what this webinar is meant to answer. How do we find out why our clients want what they want? The quick answer is Think differently. If you want to find out something you don't already know, you've got to think different. This is a screenshot some of you may recognize from the famous 1984 commercial of Apple, where everyone's lined up looking at Big Brother, famous George Orwell novel. Apple did a commercial where Big Brother is speaking on the giant TV screen. Everyone's lined up, dressed exactly the same, looking at Big Brother up on the big screen. And a young person runs out and throws big sledgehammer through the screen. Apple, think different. So how do we think different? There are 3 ingredients to design thinking. You're going to see a lot of other ones perhaps, but let's keep it simple for our webinar today. 3 ingredients: investigation, creation, and experimentation. This aligns with some of what I saw in the chat earlier, where people are saying brainstorm, iterate, test, frame the client needs. Absolutely. We're going to frame it today in 3 ingredients: investigation, creation, experimentation. When I say that you'll see other framings, other ingredients, there's some famous firms out there that have their 3 stages under a slightly different name. IDEO has a 3-part framework, same basic concepts, slightly named differently. The Stanford Design School, the D School, which famously is a home and a soul of design thinking around the world, the D School at Stanford frames it in a 5-step process. Regardless of the framework that you see other people using, I want you to realize that the same underlying ingredients are basically the same. You need to investigate why people want what they want. You need to create what it is you're going to offer to them, and then experiment with that creation and with your client. Let's take them one by one. Investigation. I've added a little water line to my triangle here. And that's because as human beings, we are all icebergs. Here in Canada, I know many of you are joining from around the world, but here in Canada, off our east coast in the North Atlantic, we have Iceberg Alley. And as the icebergs break up in the spring every year, they float down from the north, following the currents, and you see these big, beautiful icebergs just off the coast, sometimes drifting into the harbors and inlets of Newfoundland. Well, human beings are icebergs too. What the heck do I mean by that? Well, an iceberg, you see, as you probably know, has 90% of its mass below the waterline. Let's use that analogy to think of human beings. What we see of human beings is above the waterline. It's the things that we can observe. It's what people buy. It's what they do. What we don't see is the why. Those underlying beliefs, the emotions, the values on which people rest their lives. The values and beliefs that they hold dear and that they are expressing through their purchases, that they are expressing through the time that they spend with a certain organization, with an activity that they undertake. So what we want to do as design thinkers is create things that people want. We want to create things that people want here, down below the waterline, what we don't see. Now that's incredibly difficult. We want to create things that people want that is deep below their waterline. They want them down in their core, that core need that we don't see. So how the heck do we do that? We gather deep client insights. There's a couple different ways you can gather client insights. Your first thought might be, well, I'll just ask them what they want. Oftentimes, we'll get to ask in a moment, but oftentimes people won't necessarily tell you. They won't necessarily have that introspective deep insight either and be able to articulate it. Henry Ford famously once said, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have told me they wanted a faster horse. Instead, I gave them the car. Steve Jobs was also very famous for this, we need to invent the future and then give it to people so that they can decide for themselves rather than having a focus group up front to ask what they want. I'm not saying focus groups don't work. In fact, asking people once you have a good idea is very helpful, but you have to do it in a way that's different than just sending out a poll. So what are some ways that we can gather deep client insights? The first one is try being a client yourself. Put yourself in the client's shoes, quite literally. Or in the case of Nebbia, put yourself in your client's shower. Now that sounds a little bit crazy. What do I mean by that? Nebbia is a company that's now partnered with Moen, the faucet and shower head maker. Nebbia is a company that created an ultra low flow shower head. Unlike a traditional shower head with big nozzles that just spray tons of jets, streams, constant streams of water, Nebbia's shower head is an atomizing shower head. Jared, what does that mean, atomizing shower head? It means it takes the water and through high pressure, fine nozzles, breaks up the water into millimeter-sized droplets. So you get a nice mist. It's like those misters you might have seen sometimes out on sidewalks or theme parks on a hot summer day when it's just that mist of water sort of hanging through the air. Or you take your garden hose and you put it on the mist setting and it just sort of slowly expands and sprays out from the garden, from the from the nozzle. Nebbia came about this because it was invented by a gym owner. A gym owner in Mexico City who was spending lots of money on high flow shower heads because hot water is expensive to make. In Mexico City, you can pay for the water, you can pay for to heat it. And if you have a gym in Mexico City, people are working out, it might be hot, so they take lots of showers. So a gym owner said, how can I get a low flow shower head? He bought some things that were on the market, but man, they were just really disappointing his customers. So he started trying to take the showers as well because he works out at his own gym. He's like, yeah, these low flow shower heads really stink. They don't get the job done. It's like standing under one little pinprick of water and trying to catch the drops. How can I make it an enveloping experience while still saving on water? He just started slamming things together, experimenting with different nozzles. Skip forward a little ways, a few iterations, goes from Mexico City to Silicon Valley, installs the prototype Nebbia shower head in some gyms in Silicon Valley. It catches Tim Cook's eye, current CEO of Apple. That's sort of a thread running through our discussion today. Tim Cook sees it, tries it, says, I'm in, partners with Nebbia, introduces the founder to a couple other investors, partnership with Moen, and it takes off. But it was through that experience of the founder of Nebbia saying, I've got a real problem and I'm trying to solve it, but me as a gym owner and as a gym user and my clients around me that have the same needs as me, man, there's nothing on the market right now that works. So he tried and he developed it. And it was ultimately successful. You can buy a Nebbia ultra low flow shower head from Moen right now. What else can you do? Well, you can watch. You can observe your clients. Maybe you don't try to be deep in your client's shoes all the time because you're still stuck in your own head. As much as you try to be a client, to do the shopper experience, you still have your own paradigm. You still have your own individual needs. So what you can do is watch. Febreze here on the screen is a great example of a company watching how users used its product and then changed accordingly. Febreze you might know as the odor eliminator. You get it in a squirt bottle and you spray it on, say, your carpet after the pet makes a bit of a mess. You want to get, I have a couch just over my shoulder here, right? You could spray it on the fabric, rub it in a little bit, leave it, and it eliminates the odor. It actually has a chemical in it that breaks down the odor-causing molecules. It's a deodorizer, not just a masker, but literally gets rid of the scent. So that's how Febreze marketed it. Get rid of unwanted smells. When they actually went out and watched how people were using it in their homes, though, they went to the client's home and watched them during cleaning. What often happened is that people would go about their Saturday, Sunday afternoon cleaning routine. They get out the broom and the mop and they sweep and mop the floor. They get out a rag and sort of wipe down their countertop in their kitchen. And then they grab the Febreze and spray it through the air. Just spritz, 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 spritz. Not on anything in particular. Not trying to eliminate an odor that was on a surface, deep into the carpet, but just sprayed it out in the air. They asked, what's going on here? You're using our product all wrong. What the heck is going on? The clients responded that, well, Febreze, I've used it before to do that odor elimination stuff, but then I sort of liked the smell that it produces so much that whenever I clean, I spray it through the air. It just sort of, it's a nice moment. It smells clean all of a sudden. Even if I wasn't trying to get rid of an odor, that Febreze is just a spritz, 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 and I know I'm done, and it smells nice. So what Febreze realized is that their customers don't always need odor eliminated. Part of what they need is a ritual. Part of what they need is closure on the idea that they've done a good job, that they've finished their cleaning cycle. So Febreze changed their product. They started adding artificial scents into the product, the woodsy fresh, the pine, right? And the lemon zest, that fresh scent smell that you might have and think of. They started putting that into the bottle because it wasn't naturally there. And then aerosolized the product, not just a squeeze spray bottle that gets a lot of the product in one place, like you might want to get the pet stain out, but just sprays it out in the air. They also even changed their ads to show that product in action like that. Not just somebody spritzing it on the pet stain, but with their broom in hand, sweeping up, finishing up, and aerosol of Febreze, smile. It's that ritual that they were after, and Febreze sales took off. What else? Ask. I said you can ask. Yes, you can ask. After trying and watching, because you want to be an informed ask. You do want to ask people in a way that is informed by having already understood a little bit, not just sending out a poll with the questions that you think are relevant, but having talked to a few people first and watched them and tried it yourself so that you understand a little bit more deeply what the problems and the underlying needs are. Nordstrom has an innovation lab as part of their flagship store where they bring in a team to try new things, and then they ask. And what they did is they asked their customers to walk through symbolically a customer journey. Just write down for me what you were doing before you came in the store, what you're planning here to do, what are you going to do after this, right? So asking them about their day, not watching them in the moment, but asking them to map it out, and then saying, that's interesting. If we were to build an app, a Nordstrom app, how might you use it? Where in this journey might you take your phone out and start using the Nordstrom app? Where could it be of service? So asking is helpful after you've already sort of gone through a process. Let me give you another quick story. There's a woman in a supermarket aisle. I know some of you are calling on the phone, so we've got an image of a woman in a supermarket aisle. A colleague of mine was tasked with helping a grocery store chain understand how to better boost its sales by catering better to its clients' needs. Part of design thinking is, as I said, going into people's homes, watching them at home, watching them in the context. So my colleague went to a woman's home, not this woman in the photo, but went to a woman's home and watched her make out her grocery list. Now, there's probably two types of people in the world. There's the people that make the set list and know exactly on which aisle you're going to get which item and you stick to the list. And then there's another group of people who go in and just sort of wander around and have a empty stomach growling and say, that's good. Now, there's probably lots of people in between. I don't mean to overgeneralize, but if those are two ends of the spectrum, this particular woman was all the way at the first end of the spectrum. She made out her list. She knew exactly which aisle the product would be in, what price it was last week, just had it set, knew exactly what her meal plan was for the week. And so my colleague said, okay, great. So very planned shopper. And one of the things we do in design thinking is create personas. So this is a shopper with a plan. They follow her to the local grocery store. She goes through dutifully down the aisles, up one, down 17, up 13, et cetera, goes through the aisles, getting everything on her list dutifully in order. And then she stops. She pauses. She looks over at something in the aisle. She reaches out slowly, grabs it, and puts it in the cart. My colleague says to her, wait, that candy bar there, that candy bar wasn't on your list. What happened just now? No judgment, just want to know what happened, so ask. And she said, it's been a tough week. I've gotten a lot of stuff done, and I've gotten everything that I needed to do for my family, and I just kind of need something for myself. You know, it's a moment for me right now. I'm just going to get this candy bar for me, and I'm going to enjoy it on the way home. It wasn't on her list. It wasn't necessarily just about the candy bar. She hadn't planned for that candy bar. But in that moment, what she needed was something for her. She needed just that, part of it's that ritual moment, part of it's that self-reward for being good, so to speak, getting all your chores done, taking care of other people. Let me take care of me for a change. And so with that insight, my colleague helped the grocery store develop a more personalized reward system to create an experience for regular shoppers that celebrated them. Not just the rewards and loyalty app that you might have on your phone or something, a little card that you scan every time to collect points, but really a blowout sort of, hey, welcome to the store today. We're just celebrating regular shoppers like you. It's a party day. Here, have a free thing, right? You're the 10,000th customer kind of thing, but really tailored to individual personas to help celebrate them in that moment. So lesson number 1 from our workshop today, learn why clients want what they want. Learn why clients want what they want. Not just what they want, but why they want it and why they want what they want. Let's take a moment. We're about halfway through. Let's take a moment for a breakout exercise. We're going to, my colleague Pamela is going to give you instruction in just a moment for splitting up into breakout groups with some of the other members of the audience. What I'd like you to do during that breakout group is to discuss a few things. First, identify one thing you purchased during COVID that you probably would have not otherwise bought. So since March 15th, whenever you sort of went on lockdown, what's something that you purchased that you otherwise probably wouldn't have done? Then each person in the breakout room shares that item with the group. And all I want you to do for the first 15 seconds, just the what, not the why yet, just the what, the item itself. Then after everybody's shared what it is, pick one person as the VIP, as the focus of attention, to then explain why. Take turns asking, well, why did you buy that? Okay, but why did you need that? It fulfills this need. Why does it fulfill that need? Well, it's important to me. Why is it important to you? Drill down, down, down with at least 5 whys. You may have heard of this technique before, the 5 whys approach. Finally, pick another VIP and repeat. We'd like to have at least 2 VIPs. If you can get 3, 4 more during the 10 minutes of breakout, great. But at least 2 in total. I think that's it for my instructions. Pam, do you want to explain sort of the breakout instructions on the technical side?
Yeah, sure. So I've just opened all the rooms, or I will be in just a second. And so you're going to be able to just join the room with the click of a button. And then it'll end after 10 minutes and you'll come back. So we'll broadcast messages to you to remind you. I'm just going to recreate because it doesn't seem to be cooperating with me today.
I tell you what, we can call an audible, Pam, and we can stay in plenary.
All right.
All right, so let's do this instead. I apologize that the breakout settings don't seem to be working for the moment. Just so many of you that Zoom doesn't even know what to do with you.
There's a bit of that, I think.
Let us ask then in the chat, is there something that you bought? And then in this instance, because we won't have a time to follow up with everybody, do explain a little bit why. Try to identify for yourself, what is that underlying need? Let me explain to you sort of an example of what I mean. During COVID, I bought myself a ukulele. Now, I played trumpet in my past when I was growing up. I sang in choirs. I bought myself a ukulele, not because I'm in a ukulele band and I had a contract and I just needed a ukulele to fulfill my contract. I bought it so I could play it. That seems obvious. But why did I want to play it? Well, during COVID, it feels so closed in. It feels like everything's sort of shutting down. I wanted a way to open up to something new. I wanted a way to turn my attention away from this doom spiral that we have every day of the news. I wanted something that was bright and cheerful music, hence a ukulele that's super bright. It reminds you of island music, Hawaiian music. My wife and I, we used to live in Vancouver. We would go to Hawaii. We've been to Fiji. I love that island music. And I wanted to be transported back there, even in the midst of COVID when I was locked down in my house in Montreal. It's going to be especially important as we get into winter. So that's why I bought a ukulele, and I'm still learning, but I want to play just to, to get in the mood. Right? Isn't that happy? That's just so happy.
It is.
And for me, that's why I bought a ukulele. What are we seeing in the chat? Pamela?
All right. Let's see. There's some good answers. Puzzles to keep my hands and my mind busy. Pastel pencils because I thought it would be nice to draw, even though I suck at it. So learning a new skill. New running shoes because I wore out my old ones. Lots of walking. That's amazing. Trampoline to provide my son with some off-screen entertainment during lockdown. Books, many books. Let's see, a Bowflex bike. Gyms got shut down and I was training for an Ironman that eventually got canceled. Oh, sorry to hear that, Joseph. But I needed something to keep me moving and active. Let's see what else. Croc-like shoes based on a Facebook ad. I never buy off Facebook ads. I wanted comfy, soothing shoes to pamper my feet post-run. Disney and streaming services. Barris, I did that one too. Wanted to catch up on Star Wars and Avenger movies as a distraction from all the pandemic doom and gloom news. Still not caught up though. So there's a lot of gloves and masks. I think we all know why. A meditation cushion, that's great. Organic cheddar, because I really wanted extremely good taste when I'm missing out on restaurant meals and suppers with friends. A week at a cottage because I usually travel, and I was able to bring some family and friends, which was nice. A shade sail because I wanted to be able to work outside and enjoy the outdoors on my desk. A lot of good answers. A kayak, a large Christmas outdoor decoration. Love it. I bought myself a little Tyke basketball net to play it indoors because working from home needs something physical to do to keep me active and revive my younger days. So personalized coffee mugs for me and all my sisters so we could share coffee together on Zoom calls. Is there anything you're seeing, Jared, that you want to? A propane fire table with high BTUs. Wanted to extend my time outside, and I like to be warm. So be outside in the fall. I love that.
I love it. I see someone adopted a couple kittens. Way to keep company. Nice. A robotic Lego set. So adults buying Lego to keep your mind and your hands occupied during this time, right? So things this is really great. Someone else bought a particular cologne to be transported back to another time and space.
Right. When they could. I see a house in Canada. That's a big purchase. But not a good time to sell our other home in Costa Rica. So we adjusted our expectations and budget to meet our purchase in Canada. That's a big one.
There's an interesting, right toward the end, started a philosophy course. So I assume that is enrolled in a philosophy course. And I know a lot of people that are doing that. And it's part of it's that learning, that opening up to new things, that deeper thinking, right? It's just, wow, this is a really reflective moment. You're actually the second person I know that started a philosophy course in order to just think about and get through these issues.
I'm loving how different the reasons why are, Jared. But how similar they are as well, right? A lot of them are about nostalgia and comfort.
Yeah, that's a great point, Pamela. And the interesting thing happens there sort of at those intersections. And I think it's a great segue. So given the time, I think we'll continue to chime in the chat. I'll move forward in the presentation a bit. The insights you can generate by understanding those deeper needs why, as Pamela so rightly alluded to, was a combination of either similar items and for different reasons, right? So as you said, people buying a lot of outdoor equipment, maybe for different reasons though. One is exercise, one is spend more time with the family. Similar items for similar reasons, that one's self-explanatory. Different items for different reasons, or different items for similar reasons. So two totally different things I saw in there were cologne and my ukulele, both for the idea of transporting yourself somewhere else when you're otherwise stuck at home. Two very different products, but similar underlying reasons. The insights get sparked at the intersections. Similar items for similar reasons, that's sort of self-explanatory, right? There's a facile explanation for that. Different items for different reasons, same thing. You know, it's easy to say, well, you bought different things for different reasons, okay. The interesting thing when you're looking at this for your clients and your partners, etc., is to understand why people are purchasing or enrolling in services similar items for very different reasons, because now you're identifying what is that underlying reason underneath and realizing it's not just always the same, that there are multiple reasons underneath supporting that purchase or enrollment decision. And now you might be able to change your product or service in a way that expands and fulfills that need more directly and allows you to expand and market yourself to a whole different group, to position yourself in a different way, thereby helping people out there get what they want while doing well for your business or your organization. Similar story, or I shouldn't use the word similar, same idea for different items for similar reasons. Understanding, wow, you bought, you know, I'm just going to go back to the cologne example. You bought cologne and I bought a ukulele for why? That idea of getting to someplace special, someplace beautiful in the world, that transport during this moment of feeling locked down. Oh, wow. So there's multiple ways that we can address that underlying need. What else can we do to address that underlying need? Because perhaps I can offer another product or service or change it to get at that same underlying need from a different angle and thereby spread out my presence in that person's life, offer a wider product array. So the insights occur at the intersections. I want to remind you again, lesson 1, learn why clients want what they want. If you take nothing else away from today's session, learn why your clients want what they want. That is the core of design thinking. So that gives me an idea, you might say. Maybe it's a good one. That brings us to creation. Creation, the key is go for volume, because you might be thinking, I need good ideas, and that takes time. I understand those underlying needs. I want to give a different product or service, and I need to get a really good idea in order to launch that into the world. I just got to spend a ton of time thinking about how good that idea is going to be and make sure it's right. Well, I hate to break it to you, it's not really how ideas work. What you need you need great ideas, and that takes volume. You need to have a lot of different ideas in order to break through to great ideas. This is why the trope, the cliche of design thinking, as we see on the screen, is a wall full of multicolored Post-its. It's this volume of get everything in your head, every idea that you might have onto a Post-it and up on the wall so that you get this volume of ideas. And when you're doing that, people call this brainstorming, people call it ideating. No matter what you call it, let's stick with creation for the moment. You want to create with no rules. What do I mean by that? Well, imposing on yourself that you've got to get a really great idea and trying to think of what that is, that in a sense is a rule. Your ego is saying, darn it, you've got a master's degree in engineering, you better get this right. Your ego is a rule. Finance is always right. The boss is always right. That's a rule, even if it's not written in stone. So how do we create with no rules? Get all of that stuff out of the way. Make a safe space and really just let things flow by saying, I'm going to write down everything that pops in my head. I'm going to share it with my team, perhaps in a brainstorming session, and we're not going to have any judgment whatsoever. We're just going to get everything up on the wall, throw spaghetti at the wall, so to speak. We'll find out what's sticking later. Because what happens when you do that, we have a schematic here. There's a little graph that we haven't filled in yet. The number of ideas, the volume, versus the quality. Now, quality might mean a number of things. Let's set that aside for a moment. Just say quality of ideas by some measure. So number of ideas versus quality with rules is you might get a little bell-shaped curve where the average is sort of average quality. It's good. It's good, but it's about as good as the competition. It's about as good as people can get everywhere else, because that's the paradigm you've set for yourself by creating these rules. What do we want to do instead? Create with no rules. When we create with no rules, what we get is, admittedly, there on the left side of this graph is a big bunch of bad ideas, bad by nearly any measure. And we say there's no bad ideas because we want to create without rules. But then when we come back and sort of evaluate them, you go, you know that flying purple unicorn with the laser on its head? I don't think that's going to be the next hot Christmas toy, because it's going to burn kids, and unicorns don't exist. And even if they did, that's expensive, right? So maybe that's kind of in the low quality idea for our next breakthrough product. But wait a minute, kids like lasers and kids like unicorns, and maybe we don't have to give them a real one, and we can do a flashing light instead of a laser. And all of a sudden you start to build up and spark new ideas. And when you do that, when you review and let yourself go wild to start with, and allow yourself to then iterate and brainstorm together, hopefully with other people to get different perspectives, what you see is that your curve, yes, it flattens out pretty quickly and the average is lower, but over on the right, that bottom right is a long tail of higher volume of excellent, high quality breakthrough ideas. Because through that combination and sparking new things and getting your ego out of the way, your creative juices really start flowing. You start thinking like a beginner. You start thinking like a kid again. You put yourself in the client's shoes. And all of a sudden, before you know it, you're starting to build up a stack of really great ideas that grows and grows and grows. Thomas Edison was famously asked at one point, Mr. Edison, you tried 10,000 different ways to do the light bulb that didn't work. Weren't you ever afraid that you just kept failing? And he said, well, all I found was not failure, but ways that it pointed me to the next idea. I found 10,000 ways that could be improved upon in order to get to that breakthrough. The great secret of composers and writers and creative type people is not that they get this stroke of brilliance all at once. It's that they spend every day writing, composing, thinking, in order to get that volume and build new ideas that spark together to create great ones. So lesson number 2, we need bad ideas to get to great ideas. You might say, okay, Jared, I've done that. I have done all of the brainstorming, the thinking, the beginner's mind, the Post-it notes everywhere. We had techno music playing till 3 a.m. We were just jamming out, thinking of new ideas. Great. So the great ideas then that I have, this big stack on that right side of my curve, that great idea, are the right ideas? Are those the right ideas for my customer? Well, here's where the third step comes in: experimentation. The cost of failing with your idea, launching out into the world, depends. You may have heard in Silicon Valley, fail fast. Well, it's true, because the cost of failure depends. Let's consider on our next little graph schematic here, we've got the cost in terms of dollars and effort and whatever else you might think of cost in order to put your idea out into the world, versus the time that it takes you to do that, the planning time, the build up, all the things you do internally before you launch it out into the world. As you go further and further, that cost curve goes up and up as you go through time. Point 1 here on the screen, relatively low, might be, think of yourself as an entrepreneur. Point 1 might be the cost of failure after you've invested all of your own money. You've mortgaged your house. Point number 2 maybe is after you've borrowed more from the bank. Point number 3 is after you've gone to the loan shark, right? So you might not want to wait until you've gone all the way to the loan shark to even try out whether or not people are going to use your new idea. Let me tell you a quick story. I'm conscious, I want to get to questions and answer. A quick little story about a food truck. Food truck idea down in Boston. There's a restaurant now called Clover. Started out as an idea in a guy's room. He was working at a company at the time, but he loved vegan food. And what he did was invite a bunch of people over to his house in order to cook them vegan food and said, what do you think of this recipe? What do you think of how I put this together? And he took notes and he changed the recipe. And he did that over and over again. And then he said, all right, I'm going to try to cater for my friend's wedding. Catered for the wedding, saw how an even bigger audience liked it, learned how to cook on bigger batches, and said, this is really taken off. I'm going to, invest some more of my time and energy into this. I'm going to buy a truck. a food truck. So then he goes out and he learns where around the city of Boston people might like this food, at what times a day. He has a menu on a whiteboard that he can change at a moment's notice on the pricing, can change the menu from day to day. Eventually goes to look for investors and says, look at all the data I have, look at all the lessons I've learned by trying out over time and time again. I can tell you where in Boston, at which time of day, the profile flavors at the right price points for this to succeed. And I know I can do it at scale. So the cost of failure for him depended. That home dinner is way down on the bottom left of the curve. Design thinking is about getting your idea into a minimum viable product and trying it with real clients, with real users as early as possible to get their feedback. The goal is to learn, because you might think we need to get it right from the start, but that's the same type of thinking as I need a great idea right at the start. Man, you don't need to get it right from the start. You need to learn from the start. You need to learn quickly in order to lower that cost of failure, in order to lower the cost of learning, because the goal is not to fail. The goal is to learn and then experiment and iterate and try again and get those lessons learned sunk into your product or service. Conscious, we only have a couple minutes left. Let me tell you, if you don't believe me, another quick story about McDonald's. McDonald's, the McLobster. They tried out the product of the McLobster, and some of you in maybe in Atlantic Canada might remember it, but no good. Onion nuggets. People love our French fries. They're gonna love onion nuggets, but people love the French fries because of the flavor that it has a lot, but onions, it's not quite the right thing. So onion nuggets didn't make it very far. The McDLT, so that's a bacon, lettuce, and tomato as a hamburger. Now you might say hamburgers already come with lettuce and tomato, but what they did is they put it two separate sides of a two-sided box so that you get cool lettuce and tomato on a hot quarter pound of beef. Ooh, isn't that a novel idea? Well, of course, as soon as you put it over there, it starts to heat everything up. This one didn't go very far. People didn't come back and buy it. If they want a BLT, they'll get a BLT. They don't come to McDonald's for that. They tried pizza. Now we're getting to ideas that maybe you've seen before, you remember from your childhood. Wow, McDonald's pizza, I thought they should have kept that. Some people certainly did, but on a grander scale, wasn't enough. They couldn't compete with Domino's like we saw earlier. So scrap the pizza. They tried again, new product. I'm sure you recognize this one, the Egg McMuffin. The Egg McMuffin is like synonymous with McDonald's. The Egg McMuffin was a brand new type of product. Fast food of the burger chain that did lunch and early dinner, all of a sudden starting to play around in the breakfast space with the Denny's, the IHOPs, all the breakfast coffee shops. They created an entirely new breakfast category for them, anchored by the Egg McMuffin. They've put plenty of products around that, as we know. But the Egg McMuffin started the breakfast category for them. Breakfast globally for McDonald's represents 18% of their sales revenue, over $4 billion. US, $4 billion US, 18% of the revenues from the breakfast category. Why? Because they kept trying things. They tried new products, and finally got one that opened up a new category to them and changed their relationships with their customers to provide that underlying need that people had first thing in the morning. So testing is learning, and learning is good. That's our lesson number 3. Quick review, a few key lessons. We said learn why clients want what they want. We need bad ideas to get to great ideas. Testing is learning, and learning is good. And if I may add one final lesson, take action to uncover new possibilities. There's a bias to action in the design thinking methodology that says, go out and try this today. And I encourage you after this webinar, if you can try it immediately, try it every day. You're going to love it. We've got a few minutes for some questions. Pam.
Great, thanks, Jared. I think that you're making everyone hungry. There's been a few comments. It is close to lunch, so we're almost there. One of the questions from earlier was, this framework sounds very familiar to the Agile framework. So perhaps you can highlight some of the differences and similarities, really, of the two.
Yeah, that's a great point, and that's a comment that's often made. I absolutely agree with you. Very similar to an agile thinking methodology. And what I'd say that sets it apart, the biggest distinction between design thinking and agile is where we spent the bulk of our time during today's workshop, is really drilling down on that below the waterline approach. I'm going to turn off the screen share because we don't necessarily just have to say questions on the screen all the time. But design thinking is really built into drilling deep down below that waterline in order to understand the underlying needs. Agile has a lot of the same principles of going quickly, of iterative design sprints, of trying things out and getting feedback. But design thinking starts even further upstream during that problem identification and problem framing with a human-centered, empathy-based approach.
Great, thank you. So a few different questions up here. So some of them are about how to go about experimenting with design thinking. I'm just kind of combining some questions here. So there's some, people who have their client is the end deliverable to a customer, and so they're the middleman. Now, how can you, experiment with design thinking if the client doesn't necessarily want to? And then what about professional services, consulting services, HR consulting services, accounting consulting services, any of those types?
Yeah, so thank you for that question, Pam. What really springs to my mind initially between those two ideas of those questions is they are human-centered problems. HR services consulting absolutely is a human-centered issue. I hesitate to call it a problem, but a human-centered issue is a human-centered focus. And in that process, and even in the one you described before, where you're part of a value chain in order to deliver ultimately to the final customer, part of the role that we play as humans, as service professionals, is getting that interaction right. Getting that interaction right in a way that solves the underlying need. It's the adage of, if you want to make your boss happy, do your boss's job. Get those things done in order to alleviate. Your boss doesn't necessarily want a status report so that your boss can frame your status report and put it on the wall. They need a status report because you're getting those things done. And so similarly, in this case, if you're thinking about human resources consulting and designing that process for a flow through of information, you can go to somebody and watch how they do their job and start to realize that, oh, maybe if I sent this information in that way, formatted a little bit differently, or gave you the live updated version rather than sending the PDF via email or something like that, then that would make our working processes better. Maybe there's a communication way that you do it. It's how you organize your team structure that solves the underlying need of what people need to get their job done and what they're interested in by changing the architecture of the ways that you interact.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And it kind of leads to the next question or discussion really that was happening a little bit on the chat, which is that, the framework is wonderful, but until you adopt that culture within your organization, a framework is still a framework. And so in the very short time that we have left, is there a way that we can encourage an organization to become more agile, to adopt these ideas a little bit more and to keep them top of mind?
Yeah, so that's a really great point, that it's hard to, if you're in a large organization, be a design thinker of one, right? And to make your whole organization shift to that approach. What I would say is apply design thinking as best you can to the people nearest you or the people that are in decision making by having that empathy-based approach up front and really framing it in the sense of what are your underlying needs? What are we trying to get accomplished here? And how can we do that better? And then try something, create and put something out in the world that is a little bit different. Right? Create a small prototype. If you're in a product group that you're designing a product and you say, oh, well, we have this really gated review process. Now, some of those gates you can't skip because of FAA certification. I used to be in aerospace, right? So some of the safety things you can't skip. But perhaps you can make a small model of the product that you have in mind. Perhaps you can sort of do it on the side with a couple of your colleagues who are a bit interested and get that early feedback and that early momentum, then go to the decision maker and say, we had that conversation a couple months ago. You said your underlying need, that deeper sort of need was this. Well, we've tried something and we think that this is really going to get the job done. and build up that momentum that way. It can take a while for sure, but apply the method itself within your own company, within the stakeholders that are around you to understand and solve their deeper needs and issues as well.
Right. Scale it up after you've proven it. Proven that works. Okay, great. Well, thank you everyone for your cooperation today, your input, and thank you very much, Jared, for the great presentation on design thinking and the problems that it can help solve. We really appreciate all of you attending these sessions, and we will be sending out a link to the presentation as well as recording. Jared has also put together a list of resources and books that we can look at in order to learn more about the subject. So we'll be sending those along with our regular post email, as well as the feedback survey that we're always keen for you to contribute to, so we can make these sessions better. And we hope that we'll see you next week on November 12th with Miriam and Tamara Carver, who will be speaking about developing your virtual team and how you can develop that team further. So with that, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jared, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.